Today, we are building on properties of radicals. Okay. If n we're talking about our roots. Okay, if n is odd, and you have the same exponent inside, the answer is just going to be whatever was originally in there. Odd roots are kind of nice because if it's a negative inside, the answer is going to be negative. If it's a positive inside, the answer is going to be positive. And they're just showing you, like, if you have the cubed root of 2 cubed, your answer is 2. If you have the cubed root of negative 5 cubed, your answer is just negative 5. Anytime you have the square root of 0, your answer is 0. Okay. If you have 4x minus 7 to the 11th power and you're taking the 11th root, it's just 4x minus 7. Okay, so that's with your odd roots. Pretty easy, right? We've talked about this. Now, even roots are a little bit more complex. Okay, the reason is if I, for instance, let's say had inside negative 3 to the 2nd power, and I'm taking the square root of negative 3 to the 2nd power, remember that in order of operations, you always do parentheses first, right? So if you were to multiply this out, it would end up making what? Inside, what would it make? A positive 9, which means that my answer would actually end up being a positive 3, right? So what they're saying is that for even roots, whatever is inside, if it's to an even power, so an even root to an even power, the answer is the absolute value. Because if you were to take the absolute value of negative 3, the answer is positive 3, which is what the answer is. Do you get what I'm saying? This is different because from before we just like had one negative. But what they're saying is if you have a negative to a 2nd power, that's actually going to end up making a positive. And you can think of it the way as the absolute value of negative 7, which makes 7, for instance, on B. Do you guys understand what I'm trying to explain? Okay, 0 again doesn't matter, right? If it's positive, you're good. It's just going to be a positive answer. If it's a negative, but it's saying that it's to a 4th power, then your answer is going to end up becoming a positive 10. The place where it's tricky is if you have a variable. And the thing is with the variable is that we don't know what x is. If x is negative, but then you end up putting something to the 6th power, it's going to make that negative number positive. So that's why whenever you have a variable, you need to end up writing that answer in the absolute value. Okay? Yes? All right, so now we're going to do some practice problems. So again, cube roots are kind of nice because if it's negative, it'll be negative. If it's positive, it'll be positive. Even roots is where it's more complex. So I'm going to give you about 10 seconds to write the answer for number 1. Okay, David, what'd you get? No. Blessy, what'd you get? Negative 2 is correct. You still have to break down the 8. I know, it was like a trick question. I'm sorry. Okay, so the correct answer is negative 2. Because 8 is 2 times 2 times 2, right? I'm sorry, David. All right. Example 2. Now be thinking about how we've been doing this. Okay, bless you. What do you think? Very close. Wrong. Yes, absolute value of 3x. And why do I need to write this one in absolute value? Because it has the x, and we have no idea what the x is right now. But if you notice in here, the x is being squared. Therefore, we'd have to take the absolute value. Because we don't know what x is. If x was a negative, it would end up becoming a positive in here. So we just need to know that whatever we put in for x, it's going to end up being the absolute value. Because when you square it, you would end up getting rid of the negative. Okay, example 3. Raise your hand if you think you have the right answer. So only like 10 of you in class are pretty confident? Okay. All right, Blake, give me your answer. That is perfect. Absolute value of 2x plus 9 is the correct answer. How many got it? Outstanding. Okay, example 4. Who thinks they know what to do? Oh, yes.
For number 2, why do you put the absolute value of 3x, but we're in the floating and break down that 9?
Wait.
Because there's no,
So there's something else with
fourth
it.
root of 9.
Whenever you have a variable, because we don't know if that variable is positive or negative, it could be either, we have to write the absolute value bars, because if you had a negative 2 in here, when you squared it, it would end up becoming a positive. So whenever you write an answer, if you have a variable, you have to write it in the bars.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about you broke it down to 3. For number 3, you break down that 9.
Because this is saying 2x plus 9, if you notice, this whole thing is being raised to the 4th power, which means you have like 4 sets of the parentheses. So what I'm actually taking out is that whole parenthesis, the 2x plus 9. This one, like when you have parentheses, you're like taking out that parenthesis. This didn't have pluses or minuses, and you are breaking it down. But this is, we are breaking it down. It's just that you're breaking it down with 4 parentheses. Okay? Okay, who thinks they know what to do on example 4? Justin, what would we do? Diamond method. And if you end up factoring this, what does it factor to be?
X minus 3 squared.
X minus 3 squared is correct. You'd have x minus 3 and x minus 3. So what is the square root of x minus 3 squared? Hope. Close. David, redeem yourself.
Absolute value of x minus 3.
Absolute value of x minus 3 is correct for number 4. Okay, number 5. Now, in this unit, last unit we dealt a lot with i's. This unit we are not dealing with i's. They only want real numbers. Okay, so with that said, is this negative right here being raised to a power? It's not in parentheses. It's not being raised. The only thing that's being raised to a power here is the C. So what do you think I'm going to write for my answer here? No solution is correct. Because you have a negative under an even root, but this negative is not being raised to a power. So I wouldn't be able to get rid of the negative. So it's only when you have like a negative in parentheses being raised to an even power can you then get rid of the negative. Yes. Yes. This is no solution. Sorry. Sorry. No solution. Awesome. Okay, so she kept 3 of them or something? Okay. All right, so there's like the hole puncher right there, and then will you kind of like alphabetize them? Can you do that? Okay. All right. Okay, can somebody explain, who thinks that they can explain why it's no solution? Okay, Sydney. Okay, if you have a square root and you have a negative here, if it's an even root, this negative comes out as an I. Now, in our other examples, when we had an even root with a negative, see how the negative is in parentheses and the negative is being squared. And 2 negatives end up making a positive. Here on this problem, there are not 2 negatives. There is only 1 negative. This negative is not being squared. Therefore, it would make an I, and we are not dealing with imaginary numbers. We only want real numbers. So that's why this is no solution, because this would normally end up making an imaginary. Okay? Are we good? Okay, what's going to happen on 6? Close. If you factor this, what does it factor to be? Which those aren't the same. We can't take anything out. Do we agree with that? Therefore, your answer is actually the question. It's not no solution, it's just that it can't be simplified, and that's your answer.
To get you
No, because there's a plus 6 and a minus 6. They're not the same factors. So it doesn't have two of the same thing, and I can't pull it out. Yes. It's not no solution because there isn't anything making it undefined underneath it. It's just that I can't simplify it. Like, the square root of x squared minus 36 is as simplified as you can make it. This one is that it's going to make an imaginary number, which means it's no solution. This one just means that would, again, your answer would just be the question itself because you couldn't take anything out. Okay? Now, if it was 36x squared and there was no pluses or minuses, then it'd be the absolute value of 6x. Okay? All right, number 7. What do you think? Negative 128 is correct because they're saying it's 128 to the 7th power. If you have a negative with an odd root, your answer is just negative. Right. Okay, number 8. What do you think, Dilly? What do you think the answer is?
Is it,
The absolute value of 8
No. No. Tiffany. Or wait, Camille. Sorry. Absolute value of 2m is correct. 64. We actually just did this one when we were reviewing homework. 64 is 2 to the 6th power. M to the 6th power. It's an even root, so when we bring it out, we have to do the absolute value because we have that variable there. Hope. Why did I write them down?
Oh, that's right.
Okay. I did simplify it. This says it's 128 to the 7th power.
Yeah.
It's already to the 7th power.
Why didn't we break number 7 down?
Because it's already 128 to the 7th power. They've already written it for you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's no
There's no variable there. It's just 128 to the 7th power. So I wouldn't want to break it down more because I already have 7 128s. Other questions before I move on? Okay. Number 9. Okay. For the rest of these problems, 1, you'll show me 1 on your finger stands for A, 2 on your finger stands for B. When we get to true and false, 1 finger would be true, 2 fingers would be false. Can we all? I don't want to do like B is 4 fingers, okay? We're not doing sign language. We're using number 1 and number 2, okay? All right, are we good? We all are clear, okay. So, number 9, is the answer A or B? Show me on your fingers, please. Everybody, I want to see everyone vote. Okay, the correct answer is A. Why? Raise your hand if you want to tell me why. Why? Because it's odd, right? With odds, it's not absolute value because if it was negative inside, it's going to be negative when it comes out. It's only even roots. Okay. Are we good on number 9? Okay. Number 10. I would like you to all vote now. Okay. It looks like you all have the correct... Nathan, I don't see a vote from you. Okay. The correct answer is B.
We all got wrong.
That would make me cry. No, I'm just kidding. It just meant I need to reteach you a little more. So, the answer is B. Can somebody raise their hand and tell me why it is B? Roel.
even.
Because it's even, and we have no idea what that variable y is. But since it's being raised to the 10th power, we know that a negative would end up becoming a positive when you raise it to an even power. Okay. Are we good? All this talking is like too much. Okay, number 11. Word to true and false. So I'm going to give you a second to think about number 11 before you vote. And then remember that 1 is true and 2 is false. Okay, please vote now. Let me see a vote from everybody, including Nathan. I want to see a vote. Okay, all right. The correct answer is false, which most of you got that. Can you raise your hand if you can tell me what the true what would make this answer true? Alexis. Absolute value of n is correct. Why would we need it to be the absolute value of n? Because it's a variable with an even root, and it would end up making a positive. Very good. Okay, 12. Please vote now. The correct answer is true. Why is the answer true? Who can tell me? Cody.
Because it's an odd root, so it can be -0 or
Perfect answer. It is true because r could be a negative, a positive, or 0. It doesn't matter. Therefore, you do not need the absolute value. All right. In conclusion, who would like to read the answer for A but don't read all the root parts? Can I get a reader, please, for A? Okay, Blessy, read. Go for it. Whatever you want. And don't worry about reading all those roots. Okay, stop. So remember that it also can be equal to 0, right? Greater than or equal to 0. 0 underneath a root is fine. You just get the answer of 0. Okay, can I get a different reader for B? Okay, Taylor.
In the real number system, no use of the imaginary number I. You can always evaluate if the inside can be positive, negative, or 0.
And you can keep reading.
The answer can be positive, negative, or 0. If the inside is positive, the answer will be positive. If the inside is negative, the answer will be negative. If the inside is 0, the answer will be 0.
Perfect. Okay. Great job. I think we're all okay on this. What do you guys think? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to be passing out a worksheet. You are going to be able to do all your work on the worksheet as long as you don't write really big. If you want to write really big and use a separate piece of paper, go for it. If you prefer not to, you don't have to. I'm going to pass this out to you in 1 minute, but I want you to look at one problem. Okay. Numbers 23 through 28. This was not in your notes. It says, for what values of x does each expression represent a real number? So you need to say what values of x will make it a true statement. So if you have an even root, that means you can't have what under the root? A negative number. Could you have 0 underneath? Yes. So what you want to do is you want to take this and go x plus 1 equals 0. I'm not happy right now. We are going to subtract 1 to both sides, and we get x equals negative 1. When I plug negative 1 in for x, I get 0. So that means that x has to be greater than or equal to negative 1. Any value that's greater than or equal to negative 1 will make this 0 or a positive number. Anything less would be a negative and will not work. So that is my answer for 23. Except for when you get to an odd root. Could you have a negative underneath an odd root? So what would be my answer for 25? All reals. There's no work to do. It's just going to be all reals. Because it can be positive, negative, or 0 and still get a answer that is a real number. Okay? Are we good?